What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Typhoon Khanun is turning away from the country, but its strong winds and rains have left behind damage to buildings, flight cancellations, and blackouts. Bing Wang reports.
As Typhoon Khanun clears Taiwan, it's left behind debris across the country. In the east, the typhoon knocked down the bamboo roof of a well-known landmark in Taidong. Trees have collapsed and branches cover the roads. A market in the same city had 66 tents blown to pieces, costing the stall owners a combined $12,500 US. Up north, New Taipei was also affected by the storm. Scaffolding on a construction site collapsed, affecting neighboring houses.
现场无人受伤受困，有一户民宅窗户、2户民宅屋檐遭鹰架倒塌而毁损。
In Kending, Taiwan's southernmost point, waves hit the shores with violent force, washing debris onto the beaches. Local authorities had to set up red flags to stop beachgoers from swimming. But how could a typhoon that passed close to northern Taiwan also affect the southern region? Meteorologists say it's due to the corner effect.
台风是属于这种逆时针，在北海岸跟那个最南端的这个恒春半岛这边，两端这边会有最强的这种现象了。
As the typhoon moves away, it has spared lives. Now the country can begin to clear up the damage it left in its wake. Klein Wang and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
Investigators are looking for the cause of an accidental explosion at a missile base in southern Taiwan. 4 people were injured in Thursday's blast. One man, with burns over almost all of his body, is still fighting for his life. The accident happened during a routine chemical disposal procedure in Pingdong. The injured workers reportedly had at least 5 years' experience with this process, but officials say their protective gear would not have held up against the heat.
一般来讲，推进去的温度呢，将近2、3千度。我们一般的黄焰湖就是一般的火焰，可能是800到1000以内。
Accidents aren't the only problem facing Taiwan's military. It's still waiting for the delivery of over $23 billion in weapons from the U.S. Our reporter Jaime Ocon talked with Heritage Foundation security analyst Alex Velez-Green about this delay.
There's almost $23 billion US worth of weapons and equipment that hasn't been delivered to Taiwan yet. And some have said that's because of the war in Ukraine, and others have said that's because of the pandemic, and also just logistical issues within the US industrial base. But do we know the actual reason for why Taiwan hasn't seen delivery of these weapons?
There is a substantial backlog that's in large part due to constraints on U.S. production capacity. We just don't have the ability to produce as many weapons as quickly as frankly we need to. And that's been exacerbated by a lot of things you just mentioned, the pandemic, some of those supply chain issues, certainly the war in Ukraine has taxed existing production far more than many folks expected. So for all those reasons, the backlog has been exacerbated. Although I think, as you sort of alluded to in your question, it's been around for quite a while. This is not a new problem, but the urgency of dealing with it, it has only grown. And now I would say it's actually extremely urgent, particularly when we think about Taiwan.
From my understanding, the weapons that Ukraine is getting are from existing stockpiles, and the weapons that Taiwan is getting are from brand new production lines. Given those two separate production lines, why is there overlap, and why is there sort of conversation between a competition for Ukraine and Taiwan to get these weapons?
The fact is that, when we think about the weapons that Taiwan needs, many of them, first of all, are the same or very similar weapons to what Ukraine needs and has often received. And just from a sourcing perspective, many of those exist in U.S. stockpiles now, in many cases, at far lower levels because of how much we've sent to Ukraine. But many of the weapons that Taiwan needs can come from U.S. stockpiles, and the administration is finally just starting to take advantage of that. Many will also need to be produced new. Some of those are weapons that may be sort of specific to Taiwan. Many are not, candidly. But the fact is, from where I sit, the ability of the United States and Taiwan collectively to deter, or for that matter, defeat a Chinese invasion in the next several years is at best questionable today. That wasn't true to the same extent even just 4 years ago. The question you're asking in terms of sourcing and getting these weapons to Taiwan is exactly the right question. The answer is we should be taking weapons from whatever sources available and moving them to Taiwan as quickly as possible. That's from U.S. inventories or new production.
While Taiwan waits for these $23 billion worth of weapons. Is there anything that Taiwan should be doing right now, or any sort of capability that Taiwan should be looking towards instead while it waits for these weapons?
Taiwan should speak up when the weapons that it needs, it sees going to other places instead of to Taiwan. It doesn't need to sort of engage in sort of diplomatic tit for tats or anything like that, but it's important that Taiwan speak up for itself and what it needs. But on that particular note, Taiwan needs to invest in the right capabilities. It is not a new thing that Taiwan needs to invest in certain what are called asymmetric defense capabilities, the kinds of weapons that can be fielded. They're relatively cheap on an individual level. They can be fielded in relatively large numbers. They're survivable. They're mobile. Anti-ship missiles, air and missile defenses, anti-tank weapons, these kinds of things. The Taiwan Ministry of National Defense has not historically prioritized these. It's starting to, but it's late to the game, and it needs to do that far more aggressively than it has.
That was Heritage Foundation security analyst Alex Velez-Green speaking to our reporter Jaime Ocon. Meanwhile, 2 U.S. sailors have been arrested on charges of spying for China. Federal prosecutors say Petty Officer Wen Henzhao sent detailed plans for U.S. military exercises and blueprints for radar systems to a Chinese spy in exchange for $15,000 US. They say another petty officer, Jing Cao Wei, handed over dozens of technical manuals for the USS Essex, the amphibious ship that he served on. According to prosecutors, these cases are unrelated. An official from the U.S. Justice Department says these cases are part of a pattern of Chinese espionage.
The charges demonstrate the PRC's determination to obtain information that is critical to our national defense by any means, so it could be used to their advantage.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty to the second set of federal charges laid against him since April. But as Jeremy Olivier reports, the latest indictment may not hurt his chances as he seeks the 2024 Republican presidential nomination.
Donald Trump leaves a rainy Washington, D.C. on Thursday. The former U.S. president had just been arraigned in federal court in the U.S. capital city. The case involves his alleged attempts to overturn his 2020 election defeat by President Joe Biden. That includes actions that Jack Smith, the special counsel for the case, says led to the Capitol riots on January 6, 2021.
It was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant, targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government.
Trump pleaded not guilty to charges including conspiracy to defraud the U.S. and depriving citizens of the right to vote. It was his third not guilty plea and the second federal indictment against him in 4 months. Around 100 protesters, both for and against Trump, gathered outside the courthouse. Many came with colorful signs, props, and costumes. Police patrolled the area, but the demonstrations were mostly peaceful. Before heading back to his home in Bedminster, New Jersey, Trump took aim at the latest indictment.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot.
Despite facing a growing list of criminal cases, Trump remains the clear frontrunner for Republican nominee for the U.S.'s upcoming 2024 election. A recent New York Times poll of Republican primary voters shows him with a massive 37-point lead over his main opponent, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. It's another sign that Trump's mounting troubles could boost his campaign rather than hurt it. Justin Wu and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is world famous for its food, and the newly opened Culinary exhibition in Taipei is showcasing some of the country's favorite dishes. But with recent harm to local crops, exhibitors are also learning how to adapt to a changing climate. Joyce Tseng has more.
Many tourists come to Taiwan usually for one thing, the food. And the best of Taiwan specialties are here at the Culinary exhibition at Taipei's World Trade Center. It's being hosted by Taiwan's Visitors Association, and there are around 600 stalls showcasing all things gourmet. And if only you could smell this room. There's this rich aroma of steaming seafood, but from over there, there's this sweet, cakey, buttery wisp of fresh wheel cakes. And people are excited to start tasting.
This is a breakfast seafood noodle. All sorts of seafood, crabs, scallop, and also we have abalone.
And how is it?
Good.
这个Hiroshima 的 okonomiyaki 很好，尤其他们这个师傅是专程从日本来的。
One thing the expo is highlighting is efforts to elevate and preserve local ingredients. The last couple of years, southern Taiwan has seen a historic drought, but more recently, some regions have experienced the opposite problem of torrential rains and flooding. That's made it difficult for certain produce to grow.
那很难得，因为能够现在还有这么多地瓜可以吃，真的很幸福。
With the threat of changing climates, other local farmers are adapting their ways to sustainably bring popular foods to people's tables.
因为台湾最近比较高，温度比较高啦，那你用草生栽培的话，它的那个落果率会比较少一点点。
In keeping with sustainability efforts, the first 150 people to the expo can come and rent reusable tableware for under $1. And people are clearly ready to start digging in. With your utensils ready, let the feast begin. Scott Huang and Joyce Sin in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
It's land crab breeding season in southern Taiwan. Our reporter Sandy Chi was there to see how a national park and local residents are offering the crabs a helping hand.
Countless crabs carrying their eggs and heading across the land to release them into the sea. Each year, from July to August is the peak of land crab breeding season in Tainan. Alone here around Taijiang National Park is home to 32 species of land crabs. Unlike other national parks in Taiwan, Taijiang is a wetland park located in the tropics, the perfect habitat for land crabs. Among the different species in the park, the most iconic is the brown land crab. Male crabs can grow up to 13 centimeters across, while female ones can reach 11 centimeters. An unusually large size for the creatures in this part of the world.
应该是我们台湾这边最大的这个体型，那个族群量呢，应该也是台湾就是说集中度最强的地区。
The park says the crabs are threatened by poaching, pollution, and climate change. But the biggest cause of crab death is traffic. In 2021, the national park began instituting measures to protect crabs when they're crossing roads and to help them reach breeding grounds safely. This included putting up warning signs and laying down fabric to help the crabs climb up and down steep curbs. And to help keep them safe, many locals are also pitching in.
我们小时候就很经常看到了，也是我们小时候我们的童玩呐。
Since the conservation efforts began, there has been a noticeable change in crab numbers. The park counts the creatures by marking them and noting the time and date they were spotted.
保护路线重要就是，以生物来讲，有时候会胜过于科学吧。对环境的敏感度会比较敏感。那它能够在这边，生存，而且有这么大量的话，表示这边的环境就是很好啊。
Back in 2021, around 4,000 pregnant brown land crabs were found during the entire breeding season. But this year, around 5,000 of them were spotted in just 5 days during the season's peak.
这只陆蟹的话，它的小 baby 大概有40万只、50万左右。
大花升起的时候，我们把道路给封起来，好，封起来之后呢，让大家可以在这个时间呢，大家可以用走路的，或者甚至于骑脚踏车进去的话。 我敢跟你保证，骑脚踏车的也会把脚踏车停在那边，自己用走的。
To live in harmony with the land crabs, the park had several street lights specially redesigned in 2020, as the old lights drew the crabs away from their breeding grounds. While the park and locals are working hard to protect the crabs, they've also been known to cause problems for some fish farmers.
因为 它的作用跟老鼠差不多，老鼠会挖洞，那凶狠圆轴蟹它也是会去挖洞。土体的话，它挖洞的时候会跟东家跟西家的水呢会掺杂在一起。如果它挖穿的时候，大家的鱼就跑过来跑过去了。
Despite the problems the crabs cause, the community still wants to live in harmony with them. They hope to make the creatures a local icon, both to help attract tourists and to prove that their conservation efforts have worked. John Su, Peachy Zhuang, and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. I'm Eric Gao. See you next time.